I'm Lauren Dinowith, the director of the Orion Art Center, and I want to welcome you to The Palette, our show about art and artists in our community. Today we'll take you to the studio, the Orion Art Center's new creative space and home to our new Pottery Studio. That's also where Santa stopped by for a special portrait sitting with over a dozen artists. And we'll visit behind the scenes with a trip to Locke's personal studio. We'll also get a sneak peek at Mike Hendrick's Council of Men. All that and more coming up on this edition of The Palette. Today we have the privilege of going behind the scenes with mixed media and collage artist Laura Locke. Laura's art combines color and texture, vintage ephemera, and fiber. Thank you so much for inviting us inside your studio. Tell me what inspires you.
Well, I've always been a fan of vintage imagery, history. I'm really drawn to those types of things, and I collected tons of photographs and those kinds of things, and as well as vintage books and ephemera, magazines, things. It's just really interesting to discover what life was like 100 years ago, and how people's issues really remain the same. They're still, it's a new age, but a lot of the issues are the same, and so I like to combine the two and sort of recreate some of the imagery and add my own elements and ephemera and twist on it to create something that resonates with people.
It's beautiful and it's unique. So when you're looking at starting a piece of artwork, what speaks to you?
Often it's a photograph or maybe something in the news at the moment that has my attention, and I will look through some of my photographs and try to decide if I can create a piece that will express my opinions, because often that's what art is about to me, is just being able to sort of get things off your chest, or to, get on your soapbox sometimes, or what have you.
Now tell me, speaking about this piece, what is it about this piece that you're working on now? And when you're working with a piece, what elements are you looking at?
Well, I try to connect the dots, but I don't want to be over in what I say. I want people to get whatever they can out of my pieces. I want them to interpret it. Often the interpretations differ, and that's okay with me. I don't need them to get exactly what I'm saying. I want them to feel a connection. That's basically what it is. And with something like this, often this is sort of a unique piece because I haven't worked on this type of stratus before, and I found this old box at an estate sale and decided it might make an interesting backdrop for my imagery. I found some old letters, and I have music, as you can see, and then I just drop a few words in there, and whoever is looking might get my message and might get their own. So
you use a lot of different materials in your artwork.
I do. I like to go to vintage estate sales and things like that, and I gather, whatever I can find. A lot of times it's paper. I've really been lucky to find letters that are. One is from 1918, and I like to use the actual letters in my work, and sometimes it's relevant, sometimes it's just to add to the vintage feel of the piece.
It's important to you to use the originals.
It is. I like that. I think that if I were buying it, that would be something that I would want. I don't like to photocopy things. A lot of times the inks don't stay as well, and you have trouble with running and that type of thing. I don't have that problem when I use
So really, your pieces are really infused with true history then.
They are, and that's one of the things I love about it, and I love doing it. I sort of can study as I go, you know. I learn a little more all the time. I find things that are like these little blue books that they, you know, the art of courtship, and they're hilarious. You know, the myth of immortality. I mean, they're written. This one is Clement Wood and Joseph McCabe. The futility and the belief of God. I know that's a little bit heavy, but anyway, those were in the 1920s and 30s. You know, so. It's interesting. I also like to collect elements, some of them vintage, some of them not. Sometimes I'll put actual pieces of, you know, I'll put buttons or vintage items on my pieces and secure them just to add. Lately I've been buying just strange things and hoping to incorporate them in some way. But, you know, wherever I go, I just look for things like that.
And when you're creating a piece, does something just spark your interest and you say, oh, I'm going to stick that in there?
Exactly. Or, you know, sometimes it's the actual things that make me decide that's, you know, that would look good and I should do a piece about this. You know.
What's some of the most interesting ephemera that you've included in a piece?
Oh boy, I really do like the vintage lace, and sometimes I can get the old fabric from, you know, a long time ago, 100 years ago, and in being able to add that into the ballerina skirts or something like that is to me, I really like the way that looks, and it sort of adds a little authenticity because I am doing a lot of vintage individuals from the time.
Tell me a little bit about your studio space. It must be awesome to have your own studio space, and I know that there would be many artists that would be envious.
Well, I just love this space. I was growing out of my previous space. I didn't have enough. I didn't have high enough ceilings to do some of the pieces I wanted to do, and I didn't have enough storage, and I was cramped. And so I decided just to start looking around. Looked on Craigslist. You know, found it was available, came and looked at it and snapped it up. I love it. I come here every day if I can.
How important is that to have your own space as an artist?
Well, it's a good way to sort of separate my home from my art in a way that works for me pretty well. There are times when I have inspiration at home when I wish I had, you know, quick accessibility to my things, but you know, that's what a notebook's for, I guess, and and it'll wait till the next day.
So tell us about your fabric.
Sure. I like to choose. I work in value, so but I also like the idea that I can use pattern fabric to create these images, and it doesn't take away from how the person looks in the end. You would think that maybe it would skew things a little bit, but I think it works well. I was really surprised by this. I tend to coordinate my fabrics into different color groups and different values so that I can just choose one from each as I go, you know, as I move along.
When I look at your fabric, I see such a variety and a texture and patterns and colors, and when you bring it all together, it works so seamlessly. That must be work. It's art as well as a real technical eye, I imagine.
Oh, and there's a lot of ones that don't make it on the canvas because of that, because I think it will work good in the beginning and it turns out not to be the right thing. But in general, I try to look for uniformity in the color. If it has too many different variations, then it doesn't work. You know, it has to be of similar color. Although, you know, to have another one thrown in, and say I have some that have golds, or you know, this black and gray will work well. Even this, which is one of my favorites right now, to me it almost looks tattooing when you put it on. You know, and tattoos are a big thing right now, so that's what I look for. I just look for things that I love. I like batiks a lot. You know, they have a uniformity front and back, which, you know, makes it easier to create with them. Well, generally I start out with the darker values first, and I do cut all my fabrics by hand. I have very sharp scissors that I've cut myself a few times with, but yeah, I start with the dark and layer it until I feel that it's done. And sometimes the ending fabrics are lighter, sometimes not so much.
Is a piece ever done?
Not really. Not really. I just say, once I sign it, generally, I say, okay, it's done. It's got to be done.
So perhaps you could show us some pieces that have stories and tell us the stories behind some of your pieces.
Okay, Weary from the Wait is one of my newest pieces, and it's one of my favorites. Again, thinking about some of the troubles that go on, I sometimes get a little weary myself, and this man is a homeless man, and when I saw his image, I was struck by the wear in his eyes, and something about his demeanor that shows the hard life that he's led, and so I just decided to make, and I have a few on the board, to make some angels that are weary from the wait, and I love the way it came out. Well, I think I choose my pieces, my individuals. Sometimes it's about the beauty of them. Often it's about some unique quality that I see. Maybe some of them seem to be like this. Take this one here. She looks wandering. This is called Wandering Pathways, and to me, she looks maybe a little bit lost. And that was the name of my first blog, was Wandering Pathways, because I like to dabble in a lot of different things.
How did you arrive at this style, this medium? It must have been a journey.
It was a journey. Initially, I did a lot of I guess crafty things and artsy things that incorporated fabric. I'm kind of a fiberholic, I guess you might say. And the first one that I did, actually, it's over there on the wall. It's my daughter, and she was a teenager at the time, had a bit of an attitude, and so I decided I'd try to capture her. When I was looking at her picture on my computer, I thought, well, I can maybe capture this with fabric, and that's where it started from. And
started with the attitude of a rebellious teenager.
It did. It did. So that's that.
And you created all this beauty out of that moment of inspiration and creativity. So what era of history then are you drawn to?
To the teens and the 20s and the early 1900s, I'd have to say. That's my era, what I really like. I do feel that was an era there was a lot going on. It was simpler but more difficult. I mean, there's a lot of women's issues, and they still go on today, but back then it was women's suffrage and that type of thing. And I was always inspired by some of these women who pushed boundaries back then, and a lot of them are about women's rights, and I think that we've come a long way. This country is far ahead of a lot of other parts of the world where women still who are oppressed and objectified. There's still a lot of objectification, and so that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. I really do feel that it's important for me to get these things out. When I have an idea, when I have a problem, if I start to work on something and I stay with it, by the time I'm done, a lot of that is worked out of me, and I feel like I can move on to something different. Hopefully, if it's a negative, I can move on to a positive, and that seems to be what happens as I flip-flop, between the good and the bad and the ugly, I guess,
So it's a real emotional experience.
It is.
Creating a piece of work.
Oh, it is, for sure.
When you sell a piece, is it like giving away part of yourself?
It is. It's more difficult to sell pieces that are just completed. I had the experience earlier this year of having a woman come in here, and I had one that I don't think I'd even signed yet, and she was like, "Oh, I have to have it, and so I signed it and sent it off with her, and it was like, oh, I really wanted to look at that for a while before it went out, but
sending your creations out into the world.
Exactly, but it makes room for more, and that's the thing. If you don't let go of some, then nothing new will come, so.
Just a few weeks ago, the Orion Art Center opened up a new creative space, and we're excited to tell you about it. It's called The Studio, and it's home to our new Pottery Studio. And over 100 people turned out to celebrate the opening.
Over the past several years, Dave Sherman, owner of Diamond Dave's Jewelers in Lake Orion, has offered space in his building to the Orion Art Center, usually for its temporary holiday market. But now the Art Center has taken up permanent residence in the building, officially opening what it calls The Studio. On Wednesday, September 25th, Lake Orion's art community gathered at the Diamond Dave building on M24 for an opening reception. Dave Sherman donated 2 floors of the space so that the art center can offer pottery and painting classes throughout the year.
The space upstairs is designated for use as a pottery studio. So people can take classes, kids, teens, adults. People can custom make classes if they want and come with the group and make whatever they want, coffee cups or tiles or whatever they want. So the space upstairs is designated as a pottery studio and we'll be offering pottery classes up there. And the space downstairs, right now we offer the space downstairs on Monday nights. There are live model portraiture painting sessions, and that's for 3 hours every Monday night. So it's filled up with artists and their easels and they're painting from live models. And then there are also painting and drawing classes, and soon we hope to add other classes, mosaic classes, and all different mediums.
During the opening reception, visitors were invited to create tiles made of clay. They were able to press plants into the clay or use various tools to create patterns. Once the clay dries, Art Center staff will later fire it in a kiln to create a work of art its creator can hang on the wall. The ability to offer pottery classes is something new to the Art Center and made possible by generous donations.
Dave from Diamond Dave's has given the Art Center this building to use, and as long as he gives it to us, we're on our way. It started with someone donating a kiln and me being around who wanted to pick up on that, and we created all this with donations and a little bit of money from the Art Center, not much, mostly donations. And we have one wheel now that I donated here, and so we'd like to have many more wheels so we can do wheel classing, throwing on the wheel. Right now it's all hand building.
This space means so much to the Art Center. Our house is a century-old house, and it's a small space, and we do a lot out of that little space. We do a lot in the community, and but having this wonderful big space just opens up so many possibilities for us as far as classes, as far as exhibits, and possibly a gallery store. There are so many possibilities here, so it's great.
We're going to learn a little bit about Latin America,
North America, and South America.
Sometimes education needs a little inspiration. You can open doors to learning. Bring more of the arts into schools. Visit ClassActsArts.org, an arts education nonprofit.
Perhaps the most compelling art is the work that makes us think and ask questions. And that's the focus of artist Mike Hendrick's new installation. It's called A Council of Men.
He will be the center of attention. Well, he is going to be the poor person. And it's the reaction that the other men are looking at. They're trying to figure out what he is. Do they look at him as being poor and belittled, or are they looking at him with sympathy because of the way he is? You notice that I've made different nationalities too, so that what is the reaction of every person, every kind of person. Okay, this is a creation that I started on, or it's almost finished, and it's made of styrofoam. Well, actually, when I was trying to figure out how I would do this, I actually experimented with several different things, and I had big blocks of white styrofoam, and I found out that this was a little more solid and easier to use. And what I've done is to take several of these and make them into layers. So there's probably 8 of these stacked this way. I glue them together, and then when I get those, I cut out the basic form of the person. And then next I would use joint compound, which is this right here, and this is what you usually use to patch walls with. And so when I get that on, I start shaping, and I'll chisel, I'll use sandpaper, and usually your basic tools like this, I start shaping, and then I'll end up using sandpaper to refine. And but the main purpose of this is to have it look like wood. And so I'm still working on this, but it was the idea that I carved everything out of wood. And so I'm still working on it, but I'm putting the grain in, and I'm transitioning the wood up into the head. And so I want to get that feeling. And I think what I'm going to do is actually put a little bit of the color of the shirt and tie and have it go down in, and then I'll fade it. But I've made the eyebrows. I had a wig here that I've taken, and I've made the eyebrows, even the eyelashes. I've got that. And if you'll notice on the beard on the side, this is all acrylic color. And I've actually used pencils in here too. And the beard is just a lot of little pencil marks to make the hairline. And so it's the eyes are probably the most difficult of anything to do, because depending on where he's looking, and I purposely have made him look in this direction because he will be the looking at the center person of this project, which I'm doing. Well, when I started doing this, I didn't know what wood would really do as far as the transition, because there's the outside, and then when it turns, of course you see the grain running this way, and then all of a sudden it changes. So in order to find out how it really worked, I cut this out of a limb, and so here you could see how the grain is running up. It changes, and then it changes again, and especially as it turns, it goes around, the grain will change again. And I had to do this in order to really find out how it worked. And of course here, this would be like the rough sawn piece of wood, and as it comes out, it smooths out. I knew it would be very difficult to do it, and so I wanted to accomplish at least doing one person out of this. And so I know the basic measurements of a face, and where they align with the eyes and the ears. Like the ears come off the eyebrows and the bottom of the nose, just something basic. And then from that, and all of the sculptures that I've done, there are no particular people that I've done them after. These are not so much that the face looks realistic, but that the wood grain, they're convinced. If I can convince them that it's really wood grain, that really satisfies me. And so with these, I still have a lot of work to do on them also. This is your typical acrylic paint. And what I did, first of all, I made a base color. And so this I was able to cover everything with. And that got me a start before I started using the acrylics. And of course the face has lots and lots of colors. So every color in the rainbow is in a human face. And I even use pencil at sometimes, because that you can get a different look with it. And like for instance in the cheeks, I'll use colored pencils. I use all kinds of brushes, starting from the thickest down to the thinnest. And then when you're working with eyes, that's really difficult. That's the most difficult part. And what I'll do with the eyes, when I'm finished with it, I usually take clear fingernail polish, because you want to make the eyes look like glass. And so I've yet to do that too. So there's still a lot left to do on these. What is amazing, of all the little towns around, Orion Arts Center is probably one of the only art centers around, and that's how I got associated with Orion Arts Center. And they've really worked to bring art into the city, and they've done a terrific job. And so I've, for several years now, I've entered certain art projects, but I think they're a great organization. It's been great. I just enjoy entering things, paintings, sculptures, and being retired, it gives me a chance to actually accomplish artwork and actually show it. Because if you can't do anything with it, you figure, why am I doing this? I had two heart surgeries and almost passed away. I had, that was 11 years ago. 6 years ago, I had 3 brain surgeries, and they didn't think I was going to make it. It was also followed by a stroke, and during that period, all those years, 11 years ago, I could draw. A lot of things I couldn't do. I couldn't remember things. I couldn't do my old type of work, but God gave me the ability to still draw and sculpt. So that kept me going.
It's a busy time of year for everyone, including Santa. But somehow the jolly old elf found some time to sit down for a personal modeling session with our portrait painters.
I'm down from the North Pole now. I get to bring the reindeer down and get them set up and everything before Christmas, so I'm in the area.
Actually, this painting group's been going on for 10, 12 years. We started out with Helen Kniff in Lake Orion, and then Andrea Lozano, and now we're here with the Orion Arts Center, and Diamond Dave was good enough to let us use this building to hold our painting sessions, because we have quite a few people interested. We average between 12 and 16 people a week, and the only time we don't paint is during the holiday.
I think we've never had such a high turnout of artists, and this is really heartening to have this. It's a drop-in group. You don't need to tell us you're coming. You can just arrive and bring your art materials and set up anywhere you want. It's just a fun thing.
I've been painting for quite a number of years, but I met up with this group in the late 80s. And we're just friends and come down and paint and have a good time.
I usually come out here every Monday, and we have models, and we set up models and have them in different costumes and that. And Lauren at the Art Center wanted to have us paint a Santa Claus, and she's going to have these paintings in the show at the Art Center, I believe sometime just before Christmas.
The portraits of Santa will be available for sale coming up at the Holiday Artist Market on December 11th. The Artist Market is open daily from 11 to 7 through December 22nd at the studio next to Diamond Dave's Creative Jewelers. That's where you'll be able to find some beautiful, unique gifts for every special someone on your list. If you'd like more information, just go to our website at orionartcenter.org. That wraps it up for this edition of The Palette. We wish you happy holidays, and we'll see you next time.